As highlighted in the introductory videos, we'll now hear opening remarks on behalf of the WMDC. Please welcome Father Cyprian Consiglio, the committee representative for the World Meditation Day Committee, the very body that proposed this initiative to the United Nations. Please welcome him with a warm round of applause.
Thank you and good morning. I'm honored to be here to help open our day today. I do serve on the World Meditation Day Committee, as you noticed. I want to thank also Punim Sunim and the staff here at Jungto, the wonderful warm welcome in this beautiful facility. Congratulations for that. And so impressed by all the work that you do here and globally. I want to emphasize, I live in Rome at this point. I don't work for the Vatican. I don't represent the Vatican, but I do work with them. I represent Monastic Interreligious Dialogue for Benedictine, Cistercian, and Trappist monks all over the world. I'm the International General Secretary, so that gets me to travel in many places to meet my colleagues around the world. It's my first time in Korea, and I'm experiencing a wonderful warm welcome and an immersion in the Korean culture. So, 감사합니다 also for that. Thank you. I was also able to represent us in Geneva at the United Nations this past December, and some of what I have to say to you this morning is how I also addressed the General Assembly there when we inaugurated the new meditation room at the Palais des Nations in Geneva. There's a little piece of wisdom that comes from the great scientist Albert Einstein that gets mentioned often these days. The exact quote is from 1946, just as the human race was entering that era of the first atomic bombs. And he was obviously, as a physicist, very interested in all this and troubled by it. Here's his quote. Often in evolutionary processes, a species must adapt to new conditions in order to survive. Today, the atomic bomb has profoundly altered the nature of the world as we knew it, and the human race consequently finds itself in a new habitat to which it must adapt its thinking. I find it interesting, he says, even just to survive, let alone thrive. A simpler version of this might be, and this is the version I use all the time, the problems that we face in our day and age are not going to be solved by the same consciousness that created those problems in the first place. Especially the UN talks about the polycrisis that we're facing in the world. And so we need a new consciousness, perhaps even just to survive, if not to thrive. What I call a transformed consciousness or an evolved consciousness. Now, if the atomic bomb had profoundly altered the nature of the world as we knew it already in 1945, what is it that has further altered the world by this first quarter of the 21st century? If we could substitute 9/11 and the rise of terrorism or globalization and nationalism or the World Wide Web or the promise and threat of AI for those atomic bombs that were nicknamed Baby Boy and Fat Man, cute little nicknames for horrible weapons of destruction, it seems obvious to me that the problems we face in our times are not going to be solved by the same consciousness that created those problems in the first place. Desperately, we need a new consciousness. And my sisters and brothers, my friends, that's why we're here today. I'm going to speak from my own tradition. St. Paul, in his letter to the Romans, writes a very strong line. He says, this is right at the beginning of chapter 12, the letter to the Romans. He says, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your..." Now, the next word there is usually weakly translated in English as mind, by the transformation of your mind. But the Greek word that Paul uses there is actually very strong. It's the word nous, which is something very specific. I know there's enough philosophers in the room, so you'll forgive me this. In the Aristotelian sense, that word nous is something that lies beyond our sense perception, beyond our memory, beyond our imagination. According to the classical medieval philosophy, the individual nous is actually connected and stems from the universal nous, from the divine cosmos nous, from the created order. It's something that we share in, a universal consciousness we share in. And of course, both the Stoic and the Christian perspective, this is the broadest understanding of logos, which, at least from my understanding, is at least related to the Chit of Sanskrit and the Tao of China, this universal wisdom. So since there's not an adequate translation of this for me from our European languages, I usually just translate St. Paul to say, "Be transformed by the renewal of your consciousness." And what the spiritual traditions have shown, or at least what spiritual traditions have claimed, is, first of all, that it's at this deep level of our consciousness that the actual transformation of consciousness takes place. We need to be transformed by the renewal of our consciousness, and that happens at a depth we human beings rarely access. That transformation happens at a level of our consciousness we rarely access. We usually live very much in the thought waves on the surface of our ordinary consciousness. What the spiritual traditions have also claimed and shown is that, provoked by this deep work of spiritual practice, an actual transformation takes place at this deepest level of human consciousness, an evolution, you might say. A contemplative experience, a mystical experience, can lead to a whole new way of understanding and articulating both the nature of what it means to be a human being, what we might refer to as a spiritual anthropology, as well as the nature of reality itself, what philosophy and theology might call ontology or cosmology. This mystical experience, the contemplative experience, gives us a whole new way of knowing ontology and cosmology. And apropos our topic at hand, what I have found over and over again in studying the world's authentic spiritual traditions is that the Enlightenment experience, if and when it's provoked by this deep work of spiritual practice, brings about an experience of the unity of all being as a collateral effect of this transformation of consciousness. It goes with it. Those who see the self in all beings and all beings in the self hate none, say the Upanishads. Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself. This transformation brings about an experience of the unity of all being. And that in turn carries with it an aspiration for peace among people and peoples as an obvious and logical consequence. And that was actually how Albert Einstein articulated his solution too. He simply said, today we must abandon competition and secure cooperation. And that too is why we're here. So my conclusion is this. We come from so many different countries, but those who are making policy decisions are in dire need of this transformation and evolution of consciousness that can only come about from the deep work if we're not going to just survive, but even thrive as a race. So what we're doing for our own nations too. No government leader to the left or to the right or to the center has adequate solutions to the problems we face unless and until they're doing this work, because the problems we face are not going to be solved by them. They're not going to be solved by that. They're only going to be solved by a new consciousness, not going to be solved by the same consciousness that created those problems. What we're doing for the whole world. Some kind of conversion, transformation, evolution has to take place in our collective consciousness. And I believe that the deep work of mindfulness and meditation is the surest, time-tested engine of that transformation. And so I say one more time, what we're doing here, we're doing for the sake of the human race. We're doing for the sake of the whole world. Both the transformation of our consciousness and seeking the cooperation and the common paths together. And in the name of the World Meditation Community, I'm happy to say that various members of our committees are here. From the Meditation Experts Committee, there's also Sheikh Raja Harmayan from Mauritania, my brother Siddhartha Krishna from North India, the Venerable Bhante Anuruddha, Mr. Liu. From our Scientific Research Committee, Dr. Jin and Dr. Hu. From our Humanities, Arts and Ethics Committee, Ms. Huang and Ms. Fu. From the Retreat Center Alliance, Maggie Che. From our advisory group, of course, Venerable Miao Hai. We also have other on-site guests, as well as 9 other online speakers from the World Meditation Day Committee joining us from India, from Japan, Sri Lanka, the USA, China, and Canada. So we are already united in many ways. So once again, I thank you for your welcome, and let's all enjoy today together for the sake of the whole world.